The Feast of Tabernacles is an annual holy celebration commanded for us to keep by Yah. It is to be observed every seventh month on the 15th day of the month for 8 days. There is a lot of history in this feast, and part of that history reveals how the feast was celebrated by Abraham for 7 days. Then later it was celebrated by Jacob for 8 days. But let us first begin with our introduction of this feast with Abraham. The history of the Feast of Tabernacles follows the joys of our forefather and patriarch Abraham. It was during the time of the Feast of Tabernacles in the 7th month of the year that Abraham rejoiced in witnessing the blessing promised to him by Yah. He was blessed with a child in his old age by Sarah, his beloved wife of many years. He believed the prophecy told to him that the future Messiah would come from the lineage of his son Isaac. That is found in Jubilees 16 and 26. Abraham rejoiced for the 7 days of the feast and also circled around the altar 7 times, carrying branches each day of the feast. He praised Yah, knowing of the prophecy of the future Messiah coming from his lineage. In Jeremiah 33 and 15, the Messiah was also called the branch, which definitely reminds us of the branches that Abraham carried around the altar 7 times daily. Abraham's branches also remind us of the followers of the Messiah Yeshua. In John 15 and 5, the followers of the Messiah are also seen as branches of the Messiah Yeshua's vine. Let us read Jubilees 16 verses 15 through 31 to learn of the early history of the keeping of the Feast of Tabernacles amongst Israel.
And in the 6th year of the 4th week we came to Abraham, to the well of the oath, and we appeared unto him, as we had told Sarah that we should return to her, and she would have conceived a son. And we returned in the 7th month, and found Sarah with child before us. And we blessed him, and we announced to him all the things which had been decreed concerning him, that he should not die till he should beget 6 sons more, and should see them before he died, but that in Isaac should his name and seed be called, and that all the seed of his sons should be Gentiles, and be reckoned with the Gentiles. But from the sons of Isaac one should become a holy seed, and should not be reckoned among the Gentiles, for he should become the portion of the Most High. And all his seed had fallen into the possession of God, that it should be unto the Lord a people for his possession, above all nations, and that it should become a kingdom and priests and a holy nation. And we went our way, and we announced to Sarah all that we had told him, and they both rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And he built there an altar to the Lord who had delivered him, and who was making him rejoice in the land of his sojourning. And he celebrated a festival of joy in this month 7 days, near the altar which he had built at the well of the oath. And he built booths for himself and for his servants on this festival. And he was the first to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles on the earth. And during these 7 days he brought each day to the altar a burnt offering to the Lord, 2 oxen, 2 rams, 7 sheep, 1 he-goat, for a sin offering, that he might atone thereby for himself and for his seed. And as a thank offering, 7 rams, 7 kids, 7 sheep, and 7 he-goats, and for their fruit offerings and their drink offerings. And he burnt all the fat thereof on the altar, a chosen offering unto the Lord for a sweet-smelling savor. And morning and evening he burnt fragrant substances, frankincense and galbanum, and stacte, and nard, and myrrh, and spice, and costum, and all these 7 he offered, crushed, mixed together in equal parts, and pure. And he celebrated this feast during 7 days, rejoicing with all his heart and with all his soul, he and all those who were in his house. And there was no stranger with him, nor any that was uncircumcised. And he blessed his Creator, who had created him in his generation, for he had created him according to his good pleasure. For he knew and perceived that from him would arise the plant of righteousness for the eternal generations, and from him a holy seed, so that it should become like him who made all things. And he blessed and rejoiced, and he called the name of this festival the festival of the Lord, a joy acceptable to the Most High God. And we blessed him forever, and all his seed after him throughout all the generations of the earth, because he celebrated this festival in its season, according to the testimony of the heavenly tablets. For this reason it is ordained on the heavenly tablets concerning Israel, that they shall celebrate the feast of tabernacles 7 days with joy, in the 7th month, acceptable before the Lord, a statute forever throughout their generations every year. And to this there is no limit of days, for it is ordained forever regarding Israel that they should celebrate it, and dwell in booths, and set wreaths upon their heads, and take leafy boughs and willows from the brook. And Abraham took branches of palm trees, and the fruit of goodly trees, and every day going round the altar with the branches 7 times a day, in the morning, he praised and gave thanks to his God for all things in joy.
Abraham, as well as Isaac, Abraham's promised son, continued to keep the Feast of Tabernacles each year in its season, and Jacob, Isaac's chosen son, also kept the feast in its season. Jacob in turn taught his sons to keep the Feast of Tabernacles each year. Jacob brought and offered sacrifices during this feast, as written in Deuteronomy 16:16, for all males to appear before Yah and not to appear empty. Jubilees chapter 32 will show how Jacob kept the feast.
And he went up on the new moon of the 7th month to Bethel. And he built an altar in the place where he had slept, and he set up a pillar there. And he sent word to his father Isaac to come to him to his sacrifice, and to his mother Rebekah. In Isaac's days Rachel became pregnant with her son Benjamin. And Jacob counted his sons from him upwards, and to Levi fell the portion of the Lord. And his father clothed him in the garments of the priesthood, and filled his hands. And on the 15th of this month he brought to the altar 14 oxen from amongst the cattle, and 28 rams, and 49 sheep, and 7 lambs, and 21 kids of the goats as a burnt offering on the altar of sacrifice, well-pleasing for a sweet savor before God. This was his offering, in consequence of the vow which he had vowed that he would give 1/10, with their fruit offerings and their drink offerings. And when the fire had consumed it, he burnt incense on the fire over the fire, and for a thank offering 2 oxen and 4 rams, and 4 sheep, 4 he-goats, and 2 sheep of a year old, and 2 kids of the goats. And thus he did daily for 7 days. And he and all his sons and his men were eating this with joy there during 7 days, and blessing and thanking the Lord, who had delivered him out of all his tribulation, and had given him his vow.
As we read, Abraham kept the Feast of Tabernacles for only 7 days. And in the first few verses of Jubilees chapter 32, we also read that Jacob kept the feast for 7 days. Today, however, we celebrate this feast for a full 8 days. Reading further into the history of this feast will help us understand why and how we now have this additional day added to the feast. The later verses of Jubilees chapter 32 show that on the 7th day of this Feast of Tabernacles, something very special happened to Jacob. On that night, Elohim spoke with Jacob and renamed him to become Israel. Elohim also joined Jacob to the covenant given to his forefathers Abraham and Isaac. On that same night, that 7th night of the Feast of Tabernacles, Jacob, newly named Israel, was shown the tablets of heaven, which told of all that was to befall his sons throughout the ages. On these tablets, it was also revealed to Jacob that he should celebrate the feast an additional day. On the following day, Jacob did just that, and called the additional day the addition. The first 7 days of Tabernacles Jacob called the feast. Let's read Jubilees chapter 32, verses 16 through 29.
Night, on the 22nd day of this month, Jacob resolved to build that place, and to surround the court with a wall, and to sanctify it, and make it holy forever, for himself and his children after him. And the Lord appeared to him by night, and blessed him, and said unto him, Thy name shall not be called Jacob, but Israel shall they name thy name. And he said unto him again, I am the Lord who created the heaven and the earth, and I will increase thee, and multiply thee exceedingly, and kings shall come forth from thee, and they shall judge everywhere, wherever the foot of the sons of men has trodden. And I will give to thy seed all the earth which is under heaven, and they shall judge all the nations according to their desires. And after that they shall get possession of the whole earth, and inherit it forever. And he finished speaking with him, and he went up from him, and Jacob looked till he had ascended into heaven. And he saw in a vision of the night, and behold, an angel descended from heaven with 7 tablets in his hands, and he gave them to Jacob, and he read them, and knew all that was written therein, which would befall him and his sons throughout all the ages. And he showed him all that was written on the tablets, and said unto him, Do not build this place, and do not make it an eternal sanctuary, and do not dwell here, for this is not the place. Go to the house of Abraham thy father, and dwell with Isaac thy father, until the day of the death of thy father. For in Egypt thou shalt die in peace, and in this land shalt thou be buried with honor in the sepulchre of thy fathers, with Abraham and Isaac. Fear not, for as thou hast seen and read it, thus shall it all be. And do thou write down everything as thou hast seen and read. And Jacob said, Lord, how can I remember all that I have read and seen? And he said unto him, I will bring all things to thy remembrance. And he went up from him, and he awoke from his sleep, and he remembered everything which he had read and seen, and he wrote down all the words which he had read and seen. And he celebrated there yet another day, and he sacrificed thereon according to all that he sacrificed on the former days, and called its name Addition, for this day was added, and the former days he called the feast. And thus it was manifested that it should be, and it is written on the heavenly tablets, wherefore it was revealed to him that he should celebrate it, and add it to the 7 days of the feast. And its name was called Addition, because that it was recorded amongst the days of the feast days, according to the number of the days of the year.
When we read Deuteronomy chapter 16, verses 13 through 15, we can now see that the 7 days are indeed called the feast.
The feast of tabernacles 7 days, after that thou hast gathered in thy corn and thy wine. And thou shalt rejoice in thy feast, thou and thy son and thy daughter, and thy manservant and thy maidservant, and the Levite, the stranger, and the fatherless, and the widow, that are within thy gates. 7 days shalt thou keep a solemn feast unto the Lord thy God, in the place which the Lord shall choose. Because the Lord thy God shall bless thee in all thine increase, and in all the works of thine hands. Therefore thou shalt surely rejoice.
When we read Leviticus 23, verses 33 through 36, it shows that the Feast of Tabernacles is to be celebrated for 7 days, and is followed with the 8th day to be celebrated also. The 8th day of the Feast of Tabernacles is to be observed with a holy convocation, and kept as a Sabbath day. Let's read.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, The 15th day of this 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days unto the Lord. On the 1st day shall be an holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein. 7 days ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. On the 8th day shall be an holy convocation unto you, and he shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. It is a solemn assembly, and ye shall do no servile work therein. These are the feasts of the Lord, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations, to offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord, a burnt offering, and a meat offering, a sacrifice, and drink offerings, everything upon his day, beside the Sabbaths of the Lord, and beside your gifts, and beside all your vows, and beside all your freewill offerings, which ye give unto the Lord. Also in the 15th day of the 7th month, when ye have gathered in the fruit of the land, ye shall keep a feast unto the Lord 7 days. On the 1st day shall be a Sabbath, and on the 8th day shall be a Sabbath. And ye shall take you on the 1st day the boughs of goodly trees, branches of palm trees, and the boughs of thick trees, and willows of the brook, and ye shall rejoice before the Lord your God 7 days. And ye shall keep it a feast unto the Lord 7 days in the year. It shall be a statute forever in your generations. Ye shall celebrate it in the 7th month. Ye shall dwell in booths 7 days. All that are Israelites born shall dwell in booths, that your generations may know that I made the children of Israel to dwell in booths, when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. And Moses declared unto the children of Israel the feasts of the Lord.
Yah's ways are perfect, and it is such a blessing to know and keep his holy days. Praise Yah.